problem now. As you said, there was no response to that. How do we get out of this? This ball is going to keep rolling bigger and bigger. I don't even know if we can rely on the next generation of politicos to come up to get us out. I mean, we're just giving money away, and I don't believe him when he says he's open to new ideas, because he's got to stand by the mess he's created.
Well, I think what they're going to do is destroy the dollar. Right now, they've convinced themselves that the dollar's hanging in there and we don't see price inflation. But everything they're doing is putting weight on the dollar. I think they'll destroy the dollar. In this country, whether we can wait for another generation, I just have more hope with young people. But soon, hopefully we get a little bit of time. We'll have to make the decision. What should the role of government be? Should the government be taking care of us from cradle to grave? Should we depend on the Federal Reserve to monetize all our debt? Or are we going to say, look, the Constitution was a pretty good document. Maybe we ought to have limited government. Maybe we should see the government's role to protect liberty, not to manage the economy, not to manage our personal lives, and not to police the world. And if we do that, things will be okay. But right now, we don't have very many people that agree with that here in Washington.
You're not there in Washington, but you're hitting the nail on the head. From SpokeUp.com to Facebook to MySpace to Twitter, I'm on them all, and people are reaching out, especially the younger generation. They are speaking up and trying to fight this stuff. And I guess I asked Peter Schiff earlier what the banking system would look like in 3 years. What I would ask you is, what's the best case scenario for this banking system, the economy in this country, 4 years or 8 years from now? What is the best case scenario?
Well, I'm not real optimistic for 3 years. I don't think we're going to get our views across in 3 years, so I expect everything to be a lot worse. I think the economy will be much weaker. I think we will have a lot of inflation, and we will still be doing some of the dumb things that we're doing currently. But we will be closer to that day when people are starting to realize that we need a new monetary system. Maybe they will be paying more attention to our move to audit the Fed and to allow competing currencies, to repeal legal tender laws. But right now they're not listening here. But unless we do that, I mean, it'll go on for years and years. But in order to keep it together, because of the chaos it creates, we have to have an authoritarian dictatorship in order to keep the people in line and collect the revenues and make sure there's no bartering and there's no underground economy. So I say in 3 years, at the rate we're going down here, it's going to be a lot worse.
Congressman, there's two things that scare me. One was that the president's approval rating this morning was 80% after that speech. And the other was, and Tracy pointed this out, Burns, because she monitored the hearing that you just attended, with the exception of you and one or two others, your colleagues on that committee do not even understand basic Economics 101. And if some of Ben Bernanke's Princeton students had asked him the same questions that some of your colleagues asked, he would have said to them, "You didn't read the assignment last night, did you?" So we really are in a lot of trouble with the Democrats having huge majorities, with free market voices so few like yours, and with the president having an 80% approval rating.
Yeah, but you know, on the healthy side of what's happening, look at how many states are now talking about, you know, getting out from under the thumb of the federal government. There are moves on the country, but once again, that's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to happen in 3 years. But there's a healthy, growing sentiment in this country that the federal government and the Congress and the Federal Reserve have proved their ineptness. That is healthy. We just need a few more, and we have to present the case for the alternative in a way that they see it all positive rather than just disruptive.
What will it take for the government to realize that it is dead wrong, that people who made the wrong decisions must be made to fail, that you cannot force taxpayers to spend their money on goods they wouldn't buy or investments they wouldn't make?
I have no idea when they're going to learn their lesson. Unfortunately, you know, everything they're doing is going to make the situation worse. And the question is, when will they put two and two together and realize that the fire is bigger because they're pouring gasoline on it? I mean, look at Obama's speech yesterday. The main part he's talking about is more credit. He wants more consumer credit. He thinks the solution is more of the disease. I mean, that is absolutely ridiculous. And what Obama doesn't even understand is where credit comes from. He doesn't understand that it comes from savings. And if there's no credit because there's no savings, you just can't will it into existence. We need people to save their money. We need people to underconsume if we want to have credit. And, of course, since credit is scarce, we want credit going to producers. We don't want any more credit going to consumers. That's why we're in this mess. And until they figure out what the problem is, they're never going to have a solution that works.
Congressman Paul, are we going to have a real debate on the president's budget, or is it going to be as pseudo and phony and sneakily done as the things that were added in the margin of the stimulus bill?
No, there won't be any debate. The stimulus bill flew through. Today, in a little bit, we're going to vote on the omnibus bill, the tail end of last year's budget. It's nearly $500 billion. Everything's going up at the minimum of 8%. There's 1 hour debate and no amendments, so you know there's not going to be any real debate at all. Oh, I wanted to comment once again on Bernanke and his idea of what credit. And Peter was saying that he doesn't exactly know where credit comes from and where capital comes from. And I brought that up to him today, but he assured me he agreed with me on that. He says, and we only issue credit for worthy assets. We buy worthy assets, and therefore, it's not credit out of thin air. He's only buying up something worthwhile. So now we buy up derivatives as the backing to the currency and the foundation of our financial system. And he's convinced himself that, oh yeah, this is really assets that are worth something, but they're assets that have no value. That's why nobody will trade them, and there's no value to them. But we're putting those into the portfolio and putting it on the backs of all our taxpayers.
I remember when Bernanke told you and your colleagues that we would probably make money on the round 1 of TARP. How's that working out so far?
Yeah, I haven't seen any profits yet, so I don't think we're going to either.
I check as a taxpayer.
One of the problems is that you as a member of Congress haven't even been told how the $350 billion in TARP was spent. We're only going to find out because the Fox Business Network had to sue the Treasury in federal court, and 2 weeks ago a federal judge said you got 45 days to reply. I would have given them 45 minutes to reply.
Maybe there's lots of profits in it.
Don't your colleagues have the slightest intellectual curiosity as to what Ben Bernanke did with the first $350 billion?
Well, we're going to test that because very soon, hopefully I'll have it tomorrow, I'm going to introduce a bill that will mandate an audit of the Fed, and that the Fed has to turn over this information when we ask it. Because in spite of the lack of transparency on the TARP bill, that money is minor compared to the trillions that the Federal Reserve is involved in. So we will test. I hear a lot of talk on the floor. People agree with me on this. Yes, we should know, we should have oversight. But if they do want oversight, they'll have to prove it by getting on this bill. So very soon that bill is going to be introduced.
All right, Congressman Paul, can he stay with us longer, George? Okay, good. Well, how could we stop nationalization? How could we prevent the Treasury from seizing whatever it wants to seize tomorrow?
Or do we want to?
Congressman Paul?
Well, in many ways, I think we've lost that fight already because they might do something else and not call it nationalization. When they have national control and they've nationalized the losses, which is really the only thing the bankers and the corporations want. They want to socialize the losses. So that's already done. If you lose money, if you're AIG or Chase Manhattan, I mean, you get bailed out and you get the money. So we've already nationalized all those losses. I think they'll hold back on literally owning the businesses. Americans don't like socialism, but they put up with an awful lot of other stuff that is awfully close to it. It's it's a fascist system of socialism where business people have technical ownership, but they don't really have control of the business. You have to live by regulation. But we really don't have true ownership of our land today. We have title to our land, but we can't do anything with it unless we ask permission from every level of government, and we have to pay rent to stay on the land. So we don't really have true ownership of our land either.
Peter, what could be done to stop the trend towards that? Well, let me not ask that. How many times can AIG go back to the well, Peter?
Several. I mean, I'm not even sure how much it is now, $150 billion, $200 billion. But Congressman is right. So far, they're nationalizing all the losses, which seems like we're getting stuck with the worst of it. I mean, they're nationalizing the companies that are losing money. But, the principle, eventually when you give the government power and they start doing this, first they're nationalizing the companies that are losing money, but eventually they're going to start nationalizing the companies that are making money. When the government has the right, when you let the government print money and buy stuff, you've basically given the government the ability to seize any private asset they want. Because they can print unlimited quantities of money and force us to accept it, and they can buy up whatever they want.
Hey, Congressman Paul, why is it that